At their wedding, I stood up and revealed my shocking secret. Impregnant with his child, I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The church was filled with flowers, laughter, and the haunting sound of a distant wedding march. Yet, my heart raced, not from joy, but from the weight of a truth I couldn't keep hidden any longer. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every heartbeat echoed loudly in my ears, drowning out the cheerful notes surrounding me. All eyes were on them, the perfect couple, but I could only see him. Mark. My Mark. He stood there in his sharp tuxedo, a gleaming smile plastered across his face. I was meant to be in his arms. But instead, I was standing in the back, trembling with a secret that tightened my chest like a vice. I should have been happy, but a lump formed in my throat, and tears threatened to spill. The reasons behind this painful contradiction stung deeply. Mark was my best friend since childhood. We shared everything, dreams, fears, and countless secrets over midnight snacks. He promised me forever when he held my hand tightly one summer night, whispering sweet nothings beneath the stars. But somewhere along the way, we became strangers, drifting apart as he chased after Emily, the girl of his dreams. I had no right to disrupt his happiness. Or did I? Then came the moment, that fateful moment. As the officiant's voice echoed through the beautiful church, an invisible force compelled me forward, pushing me to rise. My trembling legs carried me up the aisle, the silence so thick it felt like a heavy blanket. I could hear the gasps from the audience, the whispers of confusion swirling around me. The world faded away. Mark! I shouted, my voice breaking the stillness. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide, the smile slipping from his lips. I have to tell you something. Fear surged through me. Suddenly, it felt like everyone was holding their breath. I could see Emily's face, twisted in disbelief, her shimmering veil doing nothing to hide her shock. I swallowed hard, the weight of my words ready to crash down like a thunderstorm. I'm pregnant with your child. The silence that followed choked the air. Gasps erupted, fingers pointed, mouths agape. Their stares pierced through me. I could feel my cheeks flush, the heat rising from embarrassment, anger, and desperation all swirling together. My heart pounded, everything felt surreal. 100 questions raced through my mind. How had I let it get this far? Could there be a chance, any chance for us? The flicker of hope danced amidst the chaos, but would it be enough? I looked at Mark, and our eyes locked, his filled with confusion, disbelief, and a hint of something deeper. The world around us was still, suspended in time. I waited for his reaction, my heart in my throat, knowing I had shattered everything. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The echoes of my confession swirled in the air like a haunting melody, the words wrapping around the chaos in the room. Mark's eyes searched mine, filled with a tempest of emotions that mirrored the storm raging inside me. I could see the cracks forming on the surface of his polished demeanor, the perfect husband-to-be now suddenly marred by confusion and betrayal. Emily's gasp sliced through the suffocating silence. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice sharp, trembling with a mixture of disbelief and fury. The laughter that had filled the church moments before now lay cold and cracked like an abandoned treasure chest turned to dust. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, choking my throat as I took a hesitant step closer to Mark. Please, Mark, it's true. I didn't know how to tell you until now. The gravity of my words hung between us, threatening to pull us into an unfathomable abyss. His gaze shifted from me to Emily, the woman whose fingers fidgeted with her veil, her expression turning from shock to anger as realization struck her. Are you serious? Emily scoffed, her voice trembling with emotion barely contained. "You think you can just walk in here and ruin our moment?" She shook her head in disbelief, her eyes turning icy as she clasped her hands together, trying to regain her composure. In that instant, I felt the weight of the chapel pressing on my chest, and I braced myself for what might come next. Mark looked torn, his gaze flitting between the woman he was supposed to marry and the woman who carried his child. Then, as if commanded by some invisible force, he stepped away from the altar, moving toward me slowly. You're pregnant?" His voice cracked, the sheer weight of what I had revealed pressed down hard on both of us. Before I could respond, a small voice piped up from the back of the church. It was my younger brother, Jake, who had been quietly watching the entire scene unfold. I think you should both sit down and talk about this. This is too much." He looked imploringly at me, a lifeline amidst the emotional upheaval that had erupted. "Talk?" Emily scoffed again, her voice dripping with sarcasm and hurt. "What's there to talk about? She's just making a scene. Mark, you cannot seriously consider this." Mark's brow furrowed as he turned back to her. "Emily, wait. Just hear her out." His voice was tentative, but firm, grounding me with its steadiness. I felt every gaze in the church upon my family's friends, their eyes filled with judgments that felt like blades against my skin. Yet, amidst that sharpness, there was an unexpected kindness. A distant aunt of mine, who had been present through so many family trials, glanced at me compassionately, as if telling me with her eyes that I was not alone. "Please," I begged, the tremble in my voice betraying my earlier bravado. "I never meant for this to happen like this. I couldn't keep it from you any longer." I could see doubt weaving its way through Mark's expression, my heart pounded with urgency as I confronted the turmoil oh so familiar to me. What would I do if he turned away? What if he chose Emily over our bond, over the life growing inside me? Mark stepped closer again, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out, grasping my shoulders gently, as if afraid I might vanish into the shadows of the consequences I had created. "But when? How?" A soft gasp slipped from my lips as I desperately clung to this moment. "Just a few weeks. I was so scared to tell you, scared you'd hate me." "As if I could ever hate you," he whispered, his eyes searching mine for understanding. "But it's so much." Emily interjected, her face taut with anger. "So, what now? You expect him to just leave me? Just like that?" Mark turned to her, his voice steady. "No, but before he could finish, the sound of a ringing phone cut through the tension like a knife. I instinctively reached for mine, heart racing as I saw the name flashing on the screen. Me mother. I had neglected to tell anyone about my circumstances, about why I had been so distant for weeks. "Answer it," Mark urged, concern etched into his brow. I hesitated. Talk about adding fuel to the fire. Would she even understand? With trembling hands, I swiped to accept the call, my throat dry. "Mom?" Her voice came through, filled with urgency. "You need to come home right away. It's your daughter's not well." The room spun as I processed her words, my heart sinking further into an abyss of worry. Mark glanced at me, his expression softening into one of understanding, yet hidden behind a veil of fear. In that moment, it dawned on me chaos around us was but a reflection of my own life, spiraling faster than I could keep up. "Mark," I started, but the words caught in my throat, replaced by the sound of my mom's voice breaking through the panic in my mind. "Please, just come home." With a heart heavy with uncertain futures, I hung up the phone, my world collapsing in upon itself once more. I looked at Mark, his eyes filled with questions, my stomach twisting into knots. I knew at that moment we were standing on the brink of something monumental, a fork in the road, a choice that could shatter or bind us even tighter. But as I took a step back, the realization crashed down like a tidal wave. I had to make this choice alone, no matter how much I wanted him by my side. And somewhere deep down, I feared the truth that was surfacing. What if I had to choose between my family and the life I had begun to form? What if Mark couldn't come with me? Would I have to face everything, including the heartache, on my own? The uncertainty loomed large as I turned from Mark, exiting the church, the weight of revelation heavy on my shoulders. A sharp breath cut the air, and with every step away, I could feel the gulf widening between us. The future we longed for languished, drifting further into the unknown. The world outside the church pulsed with life, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had just unfurled within its walls. Each step I took felt heavier than the last as I strolled along the gravel path, the sound of crunching stones beneath my heels echoing like the beating of my heart, each thud a reminder of the weight pressing down on my chest. I slipped into my car, the familiar scent of the leather and hints of my favorite air freshener providing a momentary comfort. I couldn't ignore the swirl of emotions within me: anxiety over my father's condition, the inevitable confrontation looming over my relationship with Mark and Emily, and the undeniable truth of the life inside me that felt both like a blessing and a burden. As I gripped the steering wheel, my thoughts bounced violently between the harsh reality of my father's health and the delicate complexities of what would unfold between Mark and me. I had always assumed I could handle life's challenges with grace, but now, I was merely a vessel for chaos, navigating through storms with no compass. Before I could start the engine, my phone buzzed violently in the passenger seat, a reminder of the world I was trying to escape. It was a text from Jake, my brother. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come?" His words tugged at the frayed edges of my heart. Jake had always been my anchor. I quickly replied, "I'm on my way home. It'll be okay." But the truth lingered. What was okay anymore? I could almost hear his footsteps behind me, the echo of his concern wrapping around me like a warm blanket. After a quick drive defined by blurred city lights and heavy thoughts, I finally reached home. As I entered, the shadows danced across the walls, a disquieting reminder of the stillness of my worry. The scent of my mother's cooking wafted through the air, familiar and inviting yet edged with an unfamiliar tension, as if the house itself held its breath in expectation of what I would bring with me. "I asked that you?" My mother's voice called from the kitchen, her tone laced with fatigue yet underlined by warmth. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, then stepped inside. She turned, wiping her hands on a dishcloth, her brows knitted with concern. "I heard from your aunt that the wedding was today." I thought perhaps her voice trailed off, the unspoken words resurfacing the raw emotions from just hours earlier. "Mom, I started, struggling to find the right words around the chaos bubbling inside me. "I need to talk about Dad." A shadow flickered across her face before she resumed her composure. "He had a rough night. I think he just needs to see you. You know how he gets." I nodded, even though I felt the weight of my own tumult suffocating me like a heavy fog. "Can we go see him now?" "Of course, I'll grab my jacket," she said, moving purposefully to the back room, and I took that fleeting moment to collect myself. The space felt heavier than I remembered, burdening me with the unseen tension of impending grief. While she gathered her things, I scoured through the memories that filled the walls, the laughter shared, the tears shed. But beneath the nostalgia lurked the shadows of dread as I remembered the heartache that awaited us with my father's condition. My mother returned, and together we stepped into the cool evening air, the sky painted in violet hues that mirrored the uncertainty resting heavily on my heart. "You're quiet, honey," she observed as we drove toward the hospital, her gaze fixed on the road, yet her expression unfaltering. "I've had a lot on my mind," I finally admitted, the words spilling out before I could rein them in. "There was something I needed to tell you, something about earlier today." Before I could form the confession that had been bubbling beneath the surface, I caught sight of my phone screen lighting up. A call from Mark. I glanced at my mom, who seemed unaware of the turmoil within me, and I hesitated, nerves pulling at my insides. Would he understand the weight of my situation? "I just need to answer it," she said, her voice edged with an urgency that startled me. "You deserve to know what he wants, especially after today." For a second, I lingered in the thought of the life I was about to change, or perhaps not. I reluctantly answered through a mix of hope and fear, my heart hammering in my chest. "Mark, please, we need to talk. I can't just sit here." His voice had a sense of determination that ricocheted through me, and I closed my eyes, steeling myself against the tide of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "I'm at the hospital with my mom. Dad isn't well," I said, the words spilling out in a rush. There was a pause on the other end, heavy with realization. "I'm coming to you. Just don't go anywhere else, okay?" Mark, but he hung up, leaving me teetering on the edge of a precipice. "Everything okay?" My mom's voice cut through the fog. "Mark wants to talk." She nodded, her lips forming a thin line as she glanced back at the road. "Good," she whispered. The word hung between us like a fragile thread, both comforting and treacherous. As we parked in front of the hospital, my thoughts were tangled. Mark's presence promised a flood of emotions I wasn't ready to wade through, while my father's illness loomed heavy, threatening to eclipse whatever future I once envisioned. My mother's reassuring hand on my knee anchored me as we stepped into the building, yet an unsettling thought nagged at my heart. Would I lose my father before I found out what Mark truly felt? I was about to face the hardest truths of my life, two paths diverging before me, one toward the life inside me, and the other toward the man who was woven into the very fabric of my being. Would love withstand this storm? And could I stand strong enough to weather it? The sterile smell of antiseptic washed over me as we entered the ward, but my breath hitched when I spotted Mark leaning against the wall outside my father's room, his expression a mix of concern and fervor. He looked up as I approached, and in that moment, the storm grew dangerously close, fast approaching its peak, a revelation waiting in the wings, ready to shatter our reality all over again. The sterile brightness of the hospital corridor felt blinding, almost surreal, as I walked toward Mark. My heart waged a battle between clarity and confusion. Part of me longed for solace in his presence, while another half recoiled at the thought of facing the truth I had begun crafting in secrecy. Each step was a reminder of the enormity of what lay ahead. There was no turning back now. "Hey," he said softly, pushing himself off the wall to meet me halfway. His blue eyes held shadows of worry, and I sensed his unspoken questions dancing just beneath the surface. "How's he doing?" I shook my head, unwilling to speak the words that felt like they'd slice through the fragile hope we were clinging to, hope that my father would somehow pull through. "I don't know yet." My voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "He's still inside." Mark shifted closer, the warmth of his body providing immediate comfort. "I'm here for you," he said, his words pouring out like an incantation meant to ward off despair. It ignited a flicker of the old familiarity that had sparked between us, the laughter, the whispered hopes. But now, it felt tainted by the urgency of our reality. "I shouldn't have called you." I swallowed hard, the gravity of my decision pressing down like lead on my chest. "Not today. No, don't say that." He took a step forward again, his eyes searching mine for any sign of reassurance. "We can't keep pretending everything's okay, especially not after what? After the wedding?" I shot back, the fire in my voice shocking even myself. "After the promises we made?" I stepped back as though my words had created a wall between us. "I should have told you about this." I gestured subtly toward my abdomen, the truth wanting desperately to escape. Mark's forehead knitted in concern, pulling his features into a mix of confusion and worry. "What are you talking about?" The earnestness in his voice made my heart crack a little more. Just then, the soft beeping from the monitors in my father's room reminded us of the present, and I struggled to anchor my emotions. "This isn't the time, Mark. You shouldn't." But his hand on my arm stopped me. Its presence became an anchor, gently pressing against the swirling storm inside. "I can't pretend anymore. I don't want to." Before I could respond, my mother emerged from the room. Her expression, a mask of controlled emotion and silent dread, halted the conversation. "It's time to see him," she announced, her voice steady but underlying tremors of vulnerability edged through her words. I nodded, but my feet felt heavy as I shifted toward the open doorway. The vulnerability of what lay on the other side loomed larger than life, and I could feel the air thickening around us. As we stepped into the room, the stark reality unfolded before me. My father lay frail against the starched white sheets, His breaths labored yet steady, each one a precious reminder of the battle waged within him. Machines hummed and clicked, a cold symphony of science battling nature for his survival. I swallowed the lump in my throat, trying to reconcile the vibrant man I adored with the hollow shell before me. "Dad," I called softly, moving closer to the bed. "It's me." His eyes fluttered open, and a smile ghosted across his face, transforming him, if only momentarily, into the man I cherished, the father who taught me strength in every heartbeat. "Sweetheart, you're here." His voice was a whisper, filled with a warmth that both soothed and hurt. "I'm here, Dad." I reached for his hand, feeling its weight heavy in mine. The warmth seeped into me, grounding me even as I felt lost in the whirlwind of emotions. "How are you feeling?" He blinked slowly, the frailty of his condition evident. "I'm fighting, just like I taught you." There was a fighting glimmer in his gaze, piercing through the fog of illness. I couldn't help but smile through the tears gathering in my eyes. This was the man who had always taught me resilience. "You're going to beat this, right?" I ventured, half hoping he could hear the sincerity wrapped in my words. "Of course, I am." He gave a weak chuckle, one that crinkled his eyes. "I have too much to live for. You take care of your little one, you hear?" The words struck my heart like a hammer, sending ripples of anxiety deep into my chest. How could I promise him that when everything felt so precarious? But I nodded, unable to voice the truth that could change the course of our lives. "Yes, Dad. I will." I felt Mark beside me, hovering at the edge of this delicate moment, and I caught his gaze flickering between me and my father. I sensed he was struggling with the weight of understanding the truth of our future mingling with the reality of my past. The ticking clock on the wall felt like the rhythm of nagging realization, pushing me toward a confession that remained stuck in my throat. I took a breath, edged by the fear of losing everything that mattered if I let go of the carefully constructed barriers I had built around my struggles. As I turned to Mark, the conflict within me summoned a reckless wave of courage. "We need to get talked after this," I whispered, my heart racing with the urgency I felt rising within. "There's something I can't keep holding back." He nodded, determination flickering across his features. "I'll be here, I promise." But a sudden noise erupted from behind us, another nurse rushing into the room, urgency flashing across her face. "Mr. Thompson, we need your family to step back," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "We're losing him." I felt my heart drop into an abyss, the world around me blurring as my mind raced to process the impending loss. "No!" I cried out, my voice straining under the weight of disbelief and grief. Mark moved instinctively, wrapping an arm around me, and though it felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath us, I felt a glimmer of hope lacing through his grip. "We'll get through this," he murmured into my ear, his voice a tether pulling me back from the precipice of despair. But a sudden beeping from the monitors intensified, drowning out my fragmented thoughts. The room fell into a tense silence as medical personnel rushed in, a cyclone of activity around my father as I found myself helpless, caught between the two worlds swirling around me. A shattering realization, this moment would change everything, leaving me on the brink of love and loss, the storm raging on with no promises or calm in sight. The chaos within the room blurred into a mosaic of thrumming adrenaline as I was jolted from the inner turmoil of my own mind. Medical personnel moved like a well-oiled machine, their professionalism both a balm and a dagger in my heart. They shouldn't be fighting for my father's life, they should be sharing stories, laughing together, swapping advice for the next big adventure. But this was our reality. I stood frozen, grasping at the threadbare fabric of Mark's shirt as if it could anchor me against the flood of panic that threatened to overwhelm. "Please," I whispered, urgency clawing at my throat. "Not yet. He can't go yet." My plea was swallowed into the sterile air of the hospital, scarcely meriting a response amidst the frantic flurry around us. Mark leaned down, his breath hot against my ear. "You need to breathe," he reminded me gently, his voice steadier than I felt. "Focus on him, on how he's fighting. You have to believe it." His words wrapped around my fraying nerves and I tried to latch onto them as the beeping intensified, the rhythmic sound transforming the atmosphere into a disorienting pulse. I risked a glance at the harsh lights above, repulsed by their stark judgment and tortured by memories of quiet nights filled with laughter, late-night drives, and my father teaching me to ride a bicycle. "Please, Dad," I dared to utter, barely speaking above the thrumming chaos. "Stay with us." I squeezed his hand, coated in hospital coolness, willing warmth back into his frail body while fighting back a tidal wave of tears. In that moment, he was more than a man. He was my protector, my guiding star, a piece of who I was. Seconds felt like lifetimes, and then, as if listening to my silent pleas, my father's eyelids fluttered. "I'm here," he murmured, fatigue lacing his voice. "I'm fighting." A flicker of recognition seeped back into his eyes, the fight radiant despite the fatigue that pulled at him. At that moment, hope surged inside me, a reluctant flower blooming in the grip of despair. "You have so much left." I felt the words tumbling out like an incantation. "You're going to be a grandpa." I almost laughed, a bittersweet sound that didn't quite fit, but forced my lips to curl up anyway. "You have that road trip with Mayo promised." There was a fleeting look of confusion crossing his face as if he didn't quite understand, but then he nodded slowly, and a soft smile broke across his lips, visible despite the weariness that surrounded him. "Well, make those plans," he replied, his resolve flickering like candlelight. Mark's presence beside me felt like a compass, both grounding and reshaping the reality of what I was facing. His fingers gripped mine more tightly, bridging the fragments of my heart that had begun to fracture. This moment of tenderness seemed powerful enough to withstand the onslaught of crisis swarming the room. As a doctor stood at the foot of the bed, he met my gaze, his eyes offering a silent promise. "We're not giving up," he said, and in that simple exchange, I felt the air shift. There was a rhythm to life that still held the promise of miracles. But just as I dared to hope, another series of vibrations echoed from the nearby machines, insistent and urgent. The doctor turned back, his face tensing as he called for more assistance. Confusion wrapped around me like cold fog, and the warmth fading from my father's fingers felt like the last ember of light slipping away. "Stay," I breathed, clutching harder. Those moments, the laughter, the lessons, the walks along the beach, fleeting images spiraled through my mind amidst the chaos. "I can't do this without you. You need to stay." Mark's voice had become a soundless mantra at my side. "Well, get through this," but even I could hear the crack that crept into his spell of reassurance. How could anything be okay when I felt the world crumbling underfoot? The room became a whirlwind of frantic energy, all while I remained anchored in place, knees buckling as the gravity of my life collided with the whispers of my childhood dreams, my father's laughter, my own dreams of becoming a mother. Layers of my life, both past and present, teetered dangerously on the edge of my own shattered optimism. As the medical team continued their attempts to fight against the tightening grip of fate, something unexpected happened. A soft hand grazed my shoulder. I turned to find a nurse, her eyes ennobled with empathy. "It's going to be okay. Listen to him talk." The softness in her tone weakened the edges of my panic, if only for a moment. I nodded, my voice barely audible but filled with the desperation of a heart unwilling to relinquish hope. "Dad, I know you're tired. But please, can you just hold on for a little while longer? There's so much that we haven't experienced yet together. I need you. The baby needs you." The machine's beeping crescendoed, as if reminding me of our impending reality, and I faltered under the weight of it. Mark tightened his grip around my waist, his presence a gentle reassurance that sparked a flicker of something deep within me, pushing against the tide of despair. As everything around us seemed on the brink of unraveling, my father's gaze found strength in the depths of my own, each heartbeat echoing unsaid words of love. But just when I thought the battle was beginning to turn, a deep, shuddering breath escaped my father's chest, followed by words that pierced through the coast, a gentle whisper that slipped out just as the beeping surged. "I might not make it." Time itself stuttered in disbelief, the breath in my lungs caught between impossibility and reality. The realization crashed over me like a wave, me whirled as I knew it was shifting, spiraling into an uncharted void. And then, another sound broke through my thoughts, a loud thud as the door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. There stood Clara, my estranged sister, her face stark with anguish and determination, holding one small object clutched tightly against her chest. The sight of her stirred confusing ripples within the fabric of my heart. Love and resentment coiled tightly together. But she looked at me with eyes filled with something fierce and undeniable. I could feel it, she said breathlessly. I know it's time for the truth. Everything hung suspended for a moment, the room losing its color, and I could feel the unraveling of more than just my father's life, a tempest of secrets, hidden truths, and emotions waited to be untangled. Clarity washed over me, but it was layered with dread. I had been desperate to hold on to hope, but with Clara's sudden appearance, the ground beneath me trembled in anticipation of revelations that felt heavier than death itself. What truth could possibly emerge at this moment, and at what cost would it come? The tension in the room thickened like the air before a storm, heavy with unspoken words and memories begging to be unearthed. Clara's arrival, so unexpected and tumultuous, stirred a spark of recognition in me, igniting old wounds that had never fully healed. I was unsure if I was more terrified of my father's fading consciousness or the recognition that my sister had come back to confront the shadows of our past. Clara, I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper, suffused with equal parts disbelief and anger. What are you doing here? She stepped forward, her face illuminated by the stark fluorescent lights, revealing a vulnerability beneath her fierce exterior. I felt it, Ella. I was on my way to see you, to talk about everything. Then I got the news. An avalanche of emotions threatened to overpower me. This was not how I imagined our reunion, if it could even be called that. I steadied myself against the wall behind me, my heart rebelling against the hope that threatened to break through the walls I had built in her absence. You just vanished, Clara. You left me to face everything, to bear the weight of our broken family alone. Why now? Why here? Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, capturing fragments of our shared history. Because it matters now more than ever. We might not have much time left with Dad, and I need him to know. I need you to know everything I've kept buried. The machines surrounding my father pumped steadily, but the facade of hope they represented began to shatter. I shifted my gaze back to Dad, searching for any sign of consciousness, any flicker of recognition. Yet, his breaths had become shallow and sporadic, as though he were caught between two worlds, one of struggle and the other of peace. At that moment, Clara stepped closer, her grip tightening on the small object against her chest. I brought this for him, she said softly, revealing a delicate silver locket, its surface etched with intricate designs. It belonged to Mom. I thought it was time he had it back. I swallowed hard, the locket tangible evidence of the love that had once bound us, a way to connect the past with the heartbreak of our present. You think that will make things better? That's just a relic of a time we can't return to. That's not the point, she countered, her voice quavering but resolute. It's a reminder of the love we shared, of who we are as a family, even amidst all this pain. He needs to know he's still cherished. As she moved to lay the locket on the bedside table, a surge of adrenaline rushed through me, fed by a cocktail of nostalgia, yearning, and betrayal. And what about us? What about everything you abandoned? You don't get to waltz back in here and act like it's all fine. Our family is teetering on the brink of collapse, and you think a trinket is going to fix it. The pain etched across her features spoke volumes, yet I felt trapped in the past, unwilling to forgive or forget the years we had lost. She had opted out when we needed her most, and now I grappled with resentment that suffocated any attempt at healing. Never wanted things to be like this, Clara broke softly, her voice barely containing the emotion that swelled within her. But life is frail, and I realized that I have to make amends. Will you let me? For Dad's sake, a short laugh escaped my lips, vibrating with bitterness. You think you can just show up and fix everything with a few kind words and a locket? Years of absence can't be erased just like that, Clara. Then let's talk about it. She urged, desperation seeping into her tone. Let's talk about everything you've been hiding, everything we've been hiding. It's not too late to be honest, sister, her challenge rattled me, spinning a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. How could I bare my heart when my father's life hung on the edge like a fragile leaf? The weight of my secret, my impending motherhood, loomed large over us, something I hadn't been prepared to share, especially not while standing on the precipice of grief. Behind us, Mark stood silently, The warmth of his presence still a comfort but muted by the intensity of the moment. I could feel his unease echoing through the space, aware of the depth of my struggle and the gulf Clara's unexpected appearance had opened. Ella. Mark finally spoke, his voice breaking into the tempest of emotions. You don't have to go through this alone. You have choices. You can share. No. I interjected fiercely, my heart racing as my fears surged forth. My father lay there, struggling for breath. How could I confuse this moment with my own turmoil? This is not the time for revelations, not now, but Clara's gaze remained steadfast, unfaltering. What if I told you that you weren't alone in your secrets? That you don't have to carry the weight of this alone? A muted gasp escaped my lips as dread flared inside me. The implication of her words ignited an inferno of suspicion. What do you mean? She hesitated, as if weighing her words against the backdrop of impending tragedy. What if I told you I know something about the baby? The room dimmed as shock paralyzed me. What do you know? I whispered, fighting against the firestorm threatening to engulf my thoughts. Clara took a deep breath, each second stretching into eternity as she treaded carefully over the line between revelation and heartache. Just let me speak. We can't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, you can find a way to grasp our future. The moment trembled, lingered, weighted by the uncharted territory of emotions and realities, and I held on tightly to Mark, my lifeline amidst the chaos. With trembling hands, I felt the past and the future colliding, a tangled web unwinding before me, leaving me on the precipice of a decision that could forever alter the course of my life. Ella, Clara implored softly, her eyes searching mine. Please don't shut me out. My father's fragile breaths pulsed through the air like a countdown, a looming clock of fate allowing me a fleeting moment of time. I was on the edge of everything, of revelations that could reshape my life, of connections that might heal the fractures, and of a family threatened by both absence and impending loss, and yet, I stood before a chasm where my heart collided with a truth I wasn't ready to face. Would I be brave enough to step forward and embrace the specter of uncertainty, or would I let fear plummet me deeper into despair? All around us, whispers of the past echoed, and as I contemplated the words left unspoken, I wondered if I could at last let down my guard in order to seize the fragments of hope dancing on the edge of darkness. My hands trembled at my sides as Clara's words settled heavily in the room, a stark contrast to the rhythmic beeping of my father's heart monitor. I was acutely aware of Mark's presence, his concern simmering just beneath his calm facade as I faced Clara, the sister who had re-entered my life like a thunderclap, bringing an electric charge of both possibility and fear. What do you know? I echoed again, tone barely veiling the storm swirling within me, heart pounding. It wasn't just the question lingering in the air, it was the way it felt to have Clara back, to confront the twisted knot of anguish and longing that had grown in her absence. My voice wavered. What do you mean about the baby? Clara's gaze shifted from mine to the wilted flowers in the corner, her vulnerability hanging heavily like a curtain drawn over the moment. Ella, I didn't just vanish. I was dealing with my own life, my own fears. But when I heard the news, I reached out and discovered something I believe connects us even more than we ever realized. Stop dancing around the truth. I snapped, desperate for clarity amidst the emotional haze. You took so long to tell me. Just spit it out. I know who the father is, she finally admitted, voice wavering yet threading resolve through the admission. I mean, I know who you've been with, what you were trying to keep from everyone. Panic surged through my veins, adrenaline crashing over me like a tidal wave. Mark stepped closer, instinctively reaching out to touch my arm in a silent reminder that I was not alone, but I felt isolated under the weight of Clara's revelation. You shouldn't have come back just to cause chaos. I'm here because I want to understand, to help. Please let me in, she urged, eyes pleading. You deserve support, not to carry this on your own. Support? I couldn't help but scoff. Isn't that what you stole from me when you walked away? I faced the fallout alone while you went wherever you wanted. Now you expect me to trust you with my biggest secret? Tears glimmered in her eyes, a mirror to my own turmoil. I left to find myself. I never intended to abandon you, but for years, I've been working towards a life I thought I wanted. And through it, I found these truths that I can't ignore anymore. I realized I needed to help, and am here now. Don't you see that, help? My voice cracked as I fought to keep the shards of my composure intact. How can you help someone when you've been a ghost? You think this is easy for me? Mark's grip tightened slightly, and in the silence that enveloped the room, the weight of unspoken feelings hung like fog. I could see him, his brow furrowed, weighing how to navigate the turbulence. But in that moment, all I felt was the paralyzing fear of vulnerability. What would my father think? What would he say if he knew? I turned to the bed, grappling with the enormity of the decisions ahead. My voice softened, breaking under the emotional strain. If you really know, what are you going to do with it? Clara took a hesitant step toward me, her hand reaching out, resting against my arm as if she could anchor me to the moment. I want to help you prepare for this, whatever it is you're facing. More than past grievances, this is about family, our family, Ella. I don't want us to remain broken. The sincerity in her voice broke through the wall I had subconsciously built around my heart, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the shimmer of hope intertwining with the fear. But then, that same hope threatened to slip away with the realization that the shadow of my father lay over our conversation, a specter haunting the delicate threads of our potential reconciliation. Don't think I'm ready, I whispered. With those words, my resolve crumbled, and I turned back to my father, wishing for a sign, for the strength to unearth my secrets in this moment layered with grief and anxiety. I wanted him to wake, to offer guidance, to hold our family history together with the warmth of his presence. Instead, only his frail breaths haunted me, driving the gnawing fear deeper into my heart. Suddenly, Clara's other hand raised in a gesture of truce, breaking the ties of silence, a whisper of kindness amidst chaos. Ella, I know it all feels like too much. Just think about it. If you can't lean on me now, just promise me one thing. Don't shut me out forever. I breathed, deep and shaky, battling against the corners of my soul that whispered against opening up. But there was something in Clara's expression, a shared recognition of pain that rang true. I can't promise anything, I finally said, voice quivering. But I will think about it. Just as I turned back toward my father's bed, I caught a glimpse of recognition flickering across his face, his eyes fluttering as though trying to break free from the depths of unconsciousness. My heart leapt, hope surging within me, a glimpse of life amidst the fading shadows. And yet, at the same time, I felt dread, for with every whisper of hope, the knowledge of my secret loomed larger, threatening to unravel everything I held close. As I reached for my father's hand, a tight knot of anxiety formed in my chest as his breath suddenly shifted. Dad? Can you hear me? I called, the words spilling from my heart, my voice searching for any sign, something to guide me. And just as I felt the walls around us quaking, felt the trembling of lives entwined in the balance, his eyes opened widely, locking onto mine, vitality burning in the depths of his gaze. Before any words could escape my lips, a new figure appeared in the doorway, someone I didn't expect, someone whose presence was like a thunderstorm crashing down upon us, able to change everything. The room shifted, and all I could think of was the overwhelming realization that the future I had hoped for felt suddenly far away, while the truth hovered closer than ever, threatening to unleash its grip on all that defined me. The air in the room thickened as Clara's gaze, too, shifted toward the doorway, her expression unreadable. I followed her line of sight, my heart racing, and I felt Mark's presence waver beside me. When my eyes landed on the newcomer, the world around me came to a standstill. There stood Ryan, the father of the child I hadn't yet told anyone about, the man who had once filled my life with laughter, love, and the kind of passion that burned bright but ultimately turned to embers of regret. This was not the reunion I had envisioned. The surprise tangled with apprehension as I took in the way he looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and concern. I could feel the weight of those unsaid words gathering in the space between us, the silent chaos threatening to spill over. Ella? His voice cut through the haze, laced with hesitance and something deeper, a flicker of recognition mingled with alarm. What's going on? The question hung in the air, heavy and charged, drawing Clara and Mark into the fray like moths to a flame. It felt as though an invisible string connected us all, pulling taut, ready to snap under the pressure of unspoken truths and looming uncertainty. I felt exposed, trapped beneath the weight of their scrutiny, my secret suddenly demanding to be heard. My father's breaths became shallow, a reminder that amidst this chaos, life remained tenuous, fragile. I turned back toward him, searching for comfort through the chaos. "Dad, please," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper, as though invoking his name might summon the strength I so desperately needed. "Ella, can we talk?" Ryan urged, stepping into the room, his gaze pleading, searching my face for answers. I could sense Clara and Mark take a step back, their presence both a support and a retreat, leaving the battlefield of emotions for us to face alone. "Don't have anything to discuss," I responded with fierceness I didn't fully feel. The sting of betrayal still fresh in my mind. His absence had hurt me more than I had ever been willing to admit. "You disappeared when it mattered most. You can't just waltz back in here and expect us to pick up where we left off." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but no words spilled forth. Instead, he took a hesitant step closer, vulnerability etched in the lines of his face. "I know I deserve that, Ella. What I did was inexcusable. But I'm here now, and I need you to understand." "Understand what?" I cut him off, raw with emotions that twisted my stomach into knots. "You think a few words will wash away the years? You think showing up now changes everything? I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to support you for whatever is happening. I heard about your father. I just wanted to check if you're okay." "Support?" The word echoed in the corners of my mind, gnawing at the fragile threads of my resolve. Who was I to decide what support looked like, especially from the one person I had never truly closed the door on? "Okay?" The word escaped my lips hollowly. Nothing is okay. How can I be okay when I've been keeping a secret too big to bear? When my father is, I inhaled sharply, cutting off the thought that threatened to break through, an emotional levee on the verge of collapse. "Can help you," he pressed, genuine fervor igniting his eyes. "If there's something you're facing, you don't have to go through it alone. You didn't need to hide from me." I wanted to scream, to release all the hurt and frustration of every moment we had shared, from blissful love to heartbreaking separation, but my father's condition loomed larger than my rage. A glimmer of doubt flickered in my heart. Could I trust Ryan again? "Ella, look at me," he implored, taking another step forward, but I held my ground. "Whatever it is you're feeling, I'm ready to help, but I need to know the truth. Just like I know you want to tell me something." Heavy silence filled the space between us, almost tangible. The truth pulsed in the air, and I instinctively glanced at Clara, whose expression held both a rush of empathy and that familiar glint of concern. And that flicker of hope, was it real or just a mirage? My mind raced, skimming over memories of Ryan's smile and warmth, the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had built together. But so easily had they turned to ash, leaving nothing but remnants of what was lost. As I opened my mouth, poised on the edge of revelation, my gaze drifted back to my father's frail form, the life that flickered within him like a candle in a storm. Just how much could one person take? Suddenly, a faint sound broke the tense Iona cough that rattled through the silence like a distant echo. All heads turned toward my father, who was slowly pulling himself from the depths of unconsciousness, his beloved eyes fluttering open once more. The look he wore sent my heart racing. Was it recognition? Fear? As I stepped closer to his bedside, I felt the warmth of Ryan behind me, the weight of his gaze an urging tether in this unpredictable moment, and I was left to wonder if I could muster the strength to open my heart to him once more, even as everything, the secret, my father's health, and my fractured past hung in the balance, waiting for the truth to topple it all. "Ella," my father's voice, ragged and weak, reached me like a lifeline, but before he could say more, I felt the earth shift under my feet, an undeniable tension in the air thick enough to choke on, shifting our narrative again and again, intertwining our fates with every heartbeat. "Dad?" I turned, panic creeping back in. What could he possibly reveal, and would it thread the final strands of truth together or tear us all apart? The air in the room crackled with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath in anticipation of my father's next words. My heart raced, uncertainty racing through me like wildfire. What could he reveal that would change everything? His gaze darted between me and Ryan, emotion pooling in his tired eyes. "Ella, I need you to listen," he croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you, something important." Fear wrapped its cold fingers around my throat, a primal instinct urging me to pull back, to shield myself from whatever truth was about to emerge. My fingers trembled against the edge of the bed, anchoring myself to the present as I wrestled with the chaotic emotions churning within. I glanced backward briefly at Ryan, whose steady presence felt both soothing and infuriating in this moment. His concern only served to amplify the vulnerability that clawed at my insides. "I've seen so many things happen in this life, Ella," my father continued, his voice trembling with the weight of unshared burdens. "But some things aren't meant to be kept hidden. We carry our secrets like anchors, holding us down when we should be soaring." Dread pooled in my gut as his words echoed painfully in my mind. Despite our strained relationship, the yearning for his approval had always been a constant. And yet the bitterness and pain from years of being sidelined by his choices lingered like a dark shadow. "Dad, please," I urged, my voice cracking. "You're not alone anymore. You don't need to say anything that could hurt you." Shook his head slowly, tears pooling in his eyes, and the sight of his vulnerability sent a jolt of sorrow slicing through me. "Ella, it's not just about me. It's about you and the decisions you're going to have to make. There's more to your past than you realize. It doesn't just involve Ryan." A chill washed over the room, and my heart felt like it had dropped into a chasm. "What are you talking about?" I asked, confusion mingling with fear, my entire being feeling exposed as if he were about to unravel a thread I had tightly woven into the fabric of my life. Mark shifted uncomfortably in the doorway, and I saw Clara lean closer, eyes sharp with intent. They were witnesses to this intimate unfolding, yet I felt alone amidst the storm brewing within my heart. "Remember when you were younger?" my father began, gathering strength in his voice even as he trembled. "You and your mother used to visit the old family cabin by the lake. I didn't want you there, not because of her but because of what happened." The memory was hazy at best, a dusty attic corner in my mind. I recalled the weekends spent in the splendor of nature, the endless laughter that formed a cocoon around my innocence. But what did it have to do with today? "There's a reason why I never spoke of your mother," he continued, a haunted expression shadowing his face. "There's a reason I kept you and her at arm's length. It wasn't just to shield you from my failings. There's a family legacy we were part of. Secrets tied to that cabin that even I have yet to fully unravel." As he spoke, my heart twisted in knots, connecting fragments I had never considered. "What do you mean?" I pressed, desperate for clarity. "Ella, you're not just carrying your secrets. There are things tied to your mother, intertwined with our lineage, and they're beginning to resurface. Something is coming, something you need to be prepared for." The room grew heavier, the weight of his words settling onto my shoulders. The past didn't die quietly, it clung to me, clawing its way to the surface, unearthing a history steeped in pain and perhaps an even deeper vulnerability than I had ever known. Ryan's hand brushed against my back, a reminder of his presence and his steadying support, but I felt the chasm widening between us. How could I share a future with someone whose past loomed darker than I ever imagined? How could I begin to bear the weight of my own truth when the complex weave of legacies threatened to unravel everything? Just as my father was about to continue, a knock shattered the fragile bubble we had constructed. Everyone's heads turned toward the door, curiosity buzzing like static in the air. "Excuse me," a nurse's voice came through breezily, her tone oblivious to the tempest brewing within our small circle. "In here to check on Mr. Grant." "Is everything all right?" I remained frozen, my heart racing as she entered, the shift in the atmosphere palpable. "Yes, just a family discussion," Mark responded easily, but I could feel the strain in his voice. The nurse approached my father, her smile fading as she took in the edginess in the air. "Mr. Grant, I need you to try to rest. We're keeping a close watch, but we need to maintain a calm environment." My father nodded, the moment dissipating like smoke, leaving uncertainty in its wake. But as she turned to walk away, something shifted within me. I glanced at Ryan, who remained steadfast by my side. My fear vacillated between the old wounds and the potential for a new future. The gravity of my father's revelations surfaced within me, but something shifted in the atmosphere, a spark ignited by the nurse's intrusion. Had she interrupted my father's revelation, or was it something else entirely? Then a soft cough escaped my father's lips, this time not frail but resonating with resolve. "Ella, there's something I didn't tell you that will change everything," he whispered. "About your mother and your child." My breath caught in my throat, the final threaded mystery of my past and present intertwining in a moment that felt ethereal. I stared at him, horror and incomprehension crawling over me like a flame. Had our past finally caught up to us, entangling us more deeply than I could have ever imagined? Would my father's revelation be the breaking point or the bridge to healing? In that moment, with the weight of the world on my shoulders, I felt everything come spiraling toward an uncertain edge, and before I could speak, everything in me shattered. The room seemed to vanish around me, the walls closing in as I stood on the precipice of revelation. My father's voice, tremulous yet steady, echoed in my mind. "About your mother and your child." It felt as if time had stopped, each second stretching into infinity, laden with breathless anticipation. I couldn't breathe. Fear clawed at my insides, threatening to unravel the fragile composure I had fought to maintain. I wanted to scream, to push the words back inside, but my voice was paralyzed by the enormity of it all. I glanced at Mark, his presence both a comfort and a source of weighty expectation, the burden of my hidden truth teetering on the brink of exposure. Ryan's gaze remained riveted on me, a tempest of curiosity and hesitance brewing between us, yet there was an undeniable spark of urgency in his stance. "Dad," I finally rasped, struggling to weave words through the suffocating tension, "what do you mean?" I felt the world around me crack under the strain, each heartbeat colliding with the relentless ticking of the clock. "Your mother, she had a secret, one that can weave into the life you're nurturing now," my father began, his breath shallow but resolve palpable. "It's why I kept you both away from the cabin, why I pushed you to stay distant from your roots. There are things that run deeper than blood, ties within our lineage that would shock you. Why couldn't you tell me?" The question slipped from my lips, raw and loaded, echoing through the fragile air between us. In the depths of my heart, I had craved connection, longed for truths that could make sense of my fractured world. Why now? What could you possibly have held back that's worth tearing our family apart again? His eyelids fluttered, a flicker of pain coursing through his features as he nodded, eyes narrowing with effort. "Because I wanted to protect you from what you might become, Ella, legacy I have grappled with and wished to sever." The gravity of his words washed over me in waves, each one crashing against the shore of my understanding. This wasn't just about my father, it was about my past, my future. I looked at Clara, who had been a mere specter of my life until now, and then at Ryan, the man who had filled my heart with warmth and chaos. I realized then, as our lives wound tighter around this shared truth, that I was on the edge of unraveling generations of secrecy. "I can't do this," I whispered, feeling the emotions swell. A sob caught like a thorn in my throat. "I can't bear the weight of it all." "I need to know," my father interrupted softly. "You need to face it, not run away from it." The determination in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. This was no longer just about him, or my life, this was also about the child inside me. The silence in the room pulsed, thoughts tumbling through time like forgotten memories. My world felt like it was closing in, but there was a flicker of light, a sense that perhaps the truth, painful as it may be, could free me. I felt that spark, deep within the shadows of my heart, growing brighter. Ryan moved closer, his presence a grounding force against the onslaught of emotions swirling around me. "Ella," he whispered, soft yet unwavering, "whatever your father reveals, I'm here to help you. You don't have to carry this burden alone." With his words lingering between us, I felt a rush of blood, a thread of connection sparking between us, a reminder of who I had been and who I could become. Would I let fear govern my actions? Would I drown in uncertainty or learn to rise from even the heaviest storms? "Dad, what is this legacy?" I pressed, the urgency in my voice growing, each word infused with a newfound determination. "What do I need to know?" My father drew a breath, a wave of weariness washing over him, but I could see the flicker of fierce love in his gaze. There are dark inklings, family ties to powers you can't begin to comprehend. They tie back to a legacy of strength, a power rooted in our bloodline, one tied to your lineage as well as the child you carry. Your mother was part of it. It's why I've kept you away from it. Tension knitted itself into the fabric of the room, Clara's sharp intake of breath echoing my own startled realization. Suddenly, understanding began to fuse elements of my past into a coherent story, one I had thought I could rewrite. And what about Ryan? I stammered, turning to him, confusion flooding my senses. Did he know? What had he stumbled into? He was part of it, too, my father continued, the weight of his admission settling over us like thick fog. There are connections that bind us more deeply than you may realize. This journey isn't over, in fact, it's just beginning, the world tipped, thoughts and emotions colliding in chaotic bursts. I had never wanted anything more than clarity, but now it felt suffocatingly complex. How would I navigate this labyrinthine path against the backdrop of uncertainty and heartache? Would I accept what could be possible? A future where fear transformed into strength? As I stared at Ryan, my heart fluttering with conflict, a realization burned bright. You knew, I accused, reaching toward him with suspicion but also immense yearning for the truth. Didn't you, Ella, he began, but I cut him off, the bonds of trust feeling like they were fraying before us. I want answers, Ryan. Everything is falling apart around Meth Baby, my father's life, and now this. I wanted to protect you, he finally admitted, his voice layered with regret. I didn't want to taint your present with shadows of the past. I had always believed what? I demanded, my heart pounding with the reckless pursuit of answers. That separation would shield me, that I would be better off without knowing? Ryan, you've taken choices from me that belong solely to my existence. I should have had the right to choose. I deserve to know the truth. As the words escaped my lips, I felt the weight of my choices surging through me, anchoring me in this moment. My father's eyes narrowed in understanding. I saw a flicker of pride in them, as though he recognized strength born from tumultuous choices. You are stronger than you realize, Ella. But the moment has come for you to break free of this cycle, to embrace who you are and who you can become. My eyes fluttered, echoing those words deeply within my chest. I was teetering on the cusp of transformation, a crack through which light could shine in upon the darkest corners of my existence. But what if I fail? Even in failure, there is growth, my father declared, his voice quiet but sure. You will face the storm and then find the calm on the other side. You will tell them that you are not afraid. With those words of encouragement stirred from within the depths of my heart, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. I turned to Ryan and Clara, both of them reflecting an array of emotions, but more importantly, they embodied the desire to stand with me as I would finally confront my shadows. Okay. I will face this, I announced, conviction flooding my soul. I will embrace it, all of its legacy, my child, the potential future. I may not know what lies ahead, but I refuse to be silenced anymore. As I spoke those words aloud, I felt the room swell with an electric charge, a blend of hope bubbling to the surface as warmth washed over me. It was as if the universe itself conspired to echo back my determination. Suddenly, my father's hand tightened over mine, the warmth of his grasp igniting something deep in both of us. Ella, he whispered, his breath shaky yet resolute, never be afraid of your truth. It is your greatest strength. In that shared moment, the weight of our intertwined histories became a testament to resilience. Secrets could bind us, but they could also free us, lighting a pathway to face the unknown that awaited, and just as the storm outside quieted, the truth flared to life. The understanding that I would not retreat or succumb to fear washed over me, born from the love that swayed like a mighty oak through the tempests. Released a deep breath, my voice steady as I turned toward Ryan. And if you wish to be part of this, you must accept all of me, my past, my family, my future, and the child we will nurture together. Each word resonated with purpose, grounding me in the reality of possibilities stretching before us. As he nodded, a flicker of belief igniting behind those familiar eyes, I felt the air shift again. Out of the shadows and into the light, I would no longer be bound. I would embrace love, resilience, and hope. As the silence stretched, thick with possibility and understanding, my father's weary smile illuminated the room. As he rested back against the bed, I felt the warmth of my father's courage and the strength of connections forming anew. I love you. This is only the beginning. Those words hung in the air, bittersweet yet a promise. In that moment of clarity and resolve, I realized it wasn't just about the legacy or the love forged through chaos. It was about discovering the strength of my own truth, ready to embrace whatever came next. And as the shadows receded behind me, one single truth remained: to look ahead with unwavering faith, trusting the journey ahead could carry the promise of hope amid the storm. Together, let's face what's coming, I said, a smile lighting my face for the first time. In that instance, I knew I was no longer bound by fear, but rather welcoming the possibility of life, love, and the courage to rewrite our family's stories anew. And so, there we stood, anchored from the past yet propelled into the unknown, ready to embrace a future bursting with uncertainty, but painted vibrantly in the colors of love and belonging.